If you've got a bunch of granny squares laying around, granny squares are huge these days. Even the teeny tiny ones are huge these days. There's lots and lots of wearables that are being made out of granny squares, lots and lots of household items, blankets. I mean, there always has been, but it seems like the granny square is having a heyday. So if you're just sitting around making squares and you've got all these squares laying around, maybe they have a tail, maybe they don't. These are perfect ways of putting them together. Hey there, rock stars. Welcome to How Do You Do That Day. Today we're going to be going over how do you join granny squares. There's lots and lots of different ways. There's no way this is an exhaustive list, but I have about 6 of them, I think, that I'm going to show you. And the last one I'm going to show you is one that I think I came up with. I'm not sure. I was out searching and I couldn't find it anywhere. So, and this way does not use any yarn or thread or anything. All you need is a hook and all of the granny squares that have been hanging around. Whether you have cut off all the tails or not, you don't need any yarn. Stick around. So we're going to talk about joining granny squares. I've got squares and squares and squares and squares, squares and squares and half squares, squares. Also, I got triangles. I've got a little hexie. Anything, I've got this square. This is not a granny square, but it's a square. Anything that you have a finished stitch all around will work for all of these different types. So even if you have some back and forth rows of something that's in some sort of shape, all you need to do is go around it in a single crochet or a double or a half double or whatever and finish off those edges of the rows, and then you have, as long as you have finished stitches around, you can do any of these. So let's get to it. The one and only sewing join that I'm going to show you is just a simple whip stitch join. I'm going to take, well, let's move all of these out of the way. I am going to take 2 granny squares and measure out some yarn. And what I do is to measure the length of the distance I'm going to go. I need room for a tail. Measure the distance I'm going to go, and then I pretty much triple that. So this is just a little short, so I'm going to triple that. And I'm going to thread my needle. This is the same type of yarn that obviously it's a different color, partially so you can see it. But it is the same type of yarn that I used on these is this. So I'm just going to, and this is, I think, the first thing that I did because I didn't know how to do it. So I just did this. Just went in to the corners where they meet, put the 2 wrong sides together. So the right sides are facing out. Just pull that through. Just tie a little knot just to hold it, just a single crossover just to hold it. And then I just go in from front to back of each stitch. Now I do not do the chains in between the sets of 3. If you do, cool, go through that one too. So you go in the first, come around, bring it over, the second, bring it over, the third in that cluster. So you probably, depending upon the look that you want, you probably want to use the same color. So doing something like this, you probably want to have the same color squares, at least on the last round, and use the same color because it's not a real fancy, it's not a real pretty stitch. Then I got a little bit more ingenious and went to the inside stitches. So on this square it's the second loop, on this square this square it's the back loop, on this square it's the back loop, but as you look at it, it's the back loop and front loop, or just the 2 inside stitches, inside loops. Inside, keep getting in my way. inside, inside. And the third one, inside, inside. So you can see that what I measured out leaves me extra. So here was the tail, and then here's the other tail. So really probably just double the length, but I always do that. So if you do the outside and you're just trying to whip it together, just a little whip stitch across the full stitches. If you want to go with the inside stitches and just whip it in there, it's a little bit neater and it's a little bit flatter. If you have a lot of them, you could continue on. Well, that's not the same size, is it? You got to make sure they're the same size square. Not just the same, like this one. Which one did I just grab? This one, it's the same yarn, but I used a larger hook than on this one. So these don't match. There's the same number of stitches, so you could do it, but it's not gonna be a nice smooth project. So you could bring one like this, same size. Oh, same size, okay. So these you had like this, then you go to the next one, pull it across like that. So I ended on this stitch coming out this side. I'm going to go through the corners here, around, go into these corners here, loop around. Now they are attached. Make sure that's snug enough. And then you start going into these clusters, the granny clusters, the inside loops. That first one, make sure that you pull it in. And then you just keep stitching the inside loops, just whip stitching them together, or the whole stitch if you'd rather. If you don't want to bother with this, do the whole stitch. As long as it's the same color and it's, you know, that's a nice beginner way to do it. You do all these wonderful granny stitches, you finally figure out how to do granny stitches. Now what do I do? Well, do this. You can do that with the corner, that, and then you've got two more. So imagine these are like 5, 6, 8 inch squares. You got a good portion of one of your rows done with just a whip stitch. And then of course you would have to come back down this way. So this is one way, and this is a way that you can put them together after you have sewn in all of your ends and you've got a pile of grannies. There's no ends, well, these have the ends, but there's no ends, and so you grab some yarn from your project and you can stitch the same color yarn as your outside round, and then you can just whip stitch them together real quick. And this is not a bad look at all. This wasn't a bad look to me when I first started. So it depends on where you are in your journey, what you want to do with it when it's done. So there's that. Put that aside. This method, you probably want to have the same color yarn. I'm using a different color so that you can see it. But because it's not that pretty of a stitch, but you could also use a contrasting yarn. So I just slip stitch on, slip stitch, slip knot onto my hook, and then again I'm taking my two squares. Ooh, I'm glad I did that. Two squares right side up. Grab the side with the area where you want to join them, pick them up together so that the right sides are on the outside, wrong sides are touching each other. And now you want to start probably in the second chain in the corner here, and then on this one, that same chain mirroring it in the corner. And I'm just going to start with a slip stitch and then continue with a slip stitch in each stitch. Now, like I said, I do not do a single a chain in between my groups of 3. I'm using the inside stitch so that it lays down more. Again, I did put a chain in this one. So if you have a chain in there, then just grab the inside loop of the chain. You can do this as well with the entire stitch if you're more comfortable doing that. And just going in, slip stitching, go into the corner, slip stitch, And if you're using a contrasting color, that'll show up. It is off to the side. Got cat hair in there. So you do the whole stitch, and it's kind of a smaller stitch. You do on the inside, then you have, there's the chain in between the two outside stitches. So you can see how that works. This is on the back side. So here are the right sides. If we want to slip stitch on the back side, where you want to connect them, put them together, fold it over so that the right sides are facing. And then do your slip stitch looking at the wrong side. So you go into the outside stitch this time, because that's on the inside when you fold it back over. So you take the outside stitches, outside loops of each stitch, and slip stitch across like this. I skipped the chain and the yellow one between the three because there's not one in the pink one between the three. So that is using each of the outside stitches on the back, doing a slip stitch. You can still kind of see that yarn, so you want it to be matching. It doesn't have to be exact though, but that's another way of it's almost invisible, but that's doing the slip stitch on the back side. This is a slip stitch on the front side, and since the yarn goes in one side and comes out the other, you always have a ridge of the original yarn, the original square yarn, coming up above the outside. This is kind of hidden slip stitch on the outside loops, using the outside loops of each stitch going across. The outside loops. Because these are the inside loops that you left alone, which are now visible on the right side. This next one is just using single crochet. So get a slip knot onto your hook, put your yarn on your hook, however you do that. Have the two next to each other that you want to join. We're going to join them right here. Well, let's do this just so it's without any. We're going to join right here. So I'll put them next to each other, and I'm going to put the wrong sides together and have the right sides out. So I'm going to grab this, pull it up like this. I'm going to start in the corner, and I'm going to do a standing single crochet, which just means you start with the yarn on your hook, and then you go through and you draw up a loop, yarn over and draw through both loops. Then you just go back later and sew that in. And then we're going to go through the stitch on the front square and the whole stitch on the back square. So just line them up together. You can see the V here and the V here. I'm going to go right through them and just do a single crochet. Now this is going to leave a texture. It's more of a, I did this on purpose kind of look. So you can use the same color, or you can use a complementing, contrasting, whatever kind of color you want to really pop it. You want to use a black on there to really make all the colors kind of pop. Was I off camera? I'm sorry. So this kind of stands up like that. So when you lay it down, this is the wrong side of the stitch. This is the right side of the stitch. So for some people, that's not preferable just because it doesn't have a symmetry. But you got your single crochet here, and you keep going, and you connect all of your squares this way, and then you come back and do the sides. What I would suggest to you in any type of join, before you start joining, you put all of your squares out, unless they're all the same, right? But if you have some different colors, you have some different patterns, whatever kind of squares or shapes that you have, you want to put them out in the order that you want them to be, in the arrangement that you want them to be, and then take a picture. okay? That way, if you know, as you put it away and you come back to it, you can look at the picture to see which one comes next as you're arranging and you're joining them. That's my suggestion to you. And then find a way to pick them up in order so that as you do that, then you're just working from the top off, if you can figure out the best way to do that. This one is called the, well, I've seen it called, heard it called a zip. And it's very similar. It's a slip stitch join. But what we're gonna do is to make sure that we keep the yarn. I'm going to the inside loop of the chain closest to the granny cluster, and then I'm going to go down from the center down. So it's a little bit awkward to start with, as you can see, but then you grab your yarn over, pull through those two, and then slip stitch. Okay. So now, if you're looking at it like this, you're keeping this yarn in the center. So you go down in the inside loop from the middle. Here's the V. You go into the center of the V, push your hook down, grab this one, go to the center of the V, push your hook down to just grab the inside loops, yarn over, pull through all three. From the top, you're going to go down and grab the inside loop. From this, you go down from the inside of the V, grab the inside loop, yarn over, pull through all three. So it is still a slip stitch, but you're keeping this yarn here instead of up top. You're keeping it underneath. So I'm going, in mine, the yellow is on top, the pink is on the bottom. So I'm gonna first go down inside that V, grabbing that inside loop. Next, I'm going to go down the inside that V, grabbing the inside loop of the pink, and then pulling it through the pink, yellow, and light pink, which was on my hook. Again, I start the same square is my number 1 square, my number 2 square. Grab it, pull it through all three, can end with a chain. A little bit more to finagle with, and then go down in this chain, just the inside loop, pull through all three, and there's the slip stitch that looks like that. So we don't have, it's really, really flat. This is what it looks like on the back. You just have this dotted line. So, but you do have, you know, they do overlap a little bit. You have the darker pink over here, but it's still nice and flat. So, I mean, you could do this on either side. So if you want this to stand out and you've got lots of different colors, again, grab a contrasting color to really make all of your squares pop. So that's the zip. So what about this whole join as you go, this Jago madness that's going around? Kitty, kitty, seriously, would you like some? You're kind of in the way. There are a couple of main ways to do the join as you go method, and I'm here to show you. So let's see. You want to use the same size hook that you use to make your granny squares. This is something you have to plan ahead. The last round is where you join. So you don't complete your granny squares. So if you want to have a whole basket full of granny squares and then grab them up and then join them, make sure that you have not done your last round, except for on one. You can do one, but do not do the last round. That's where you're going to join. So on this one, I am just going to be joining on this one side right here. So I'm gonna crochet this last round 3 sides. So what we're gonna do is just join between the clusters. Now I do have a chain 1 in between these clusters because I knew I was going to join this way. If you do not do the chain 1s in between the clusters, it's still probably fine. It's still probably fine. Just try it and see what happens. So I've done the 3. I've done the cluster. This is a corner, so I've done the first half of the corner. Now I'm going to chain 1. Gigi, stop. I'm going to chain 1. And now for my second chain, I'm going to do a slip stitch into this corner. And so it's a chain, but it goes into that corner, right? So now I'm going to make the next 3 double crochet granny cluster. 2, 3. Now, if we line them up, I'm doing this last round in pink just so that you can see what's new. This is in yellow. So this is 1, 2, 3 rounds. This is 1, 2 rounds. I'm making the 3rd round. So I've connected at the corner with a slip stitch. That was the second chain. Now I've done the 3 double crochet granny cluster that matches with that one. So now instead of doing a chain 1 in between this cluster and the next, Gigi, I am going, get your tail out of the way. I am going to do a slip stitch from this square, attaching this square to the top square. So I'm gonna go down from the top down, grab my yarn, pull it through, and pull it through. There's a slip stitch around that chain. And now in this next space, I'm going to do through another cluster. 1, 2, 3. And again, instead of a chain 1, I'm going to do a slip stitch into that chain 1 space. So now I have gotten, it looks lopsided because this is a different color, but 1, 2, 3 rounds. This is the 3rd round of connecting to a 3 round square. So I've got these 2 and I've got 1 left to do for the 3rd round to finish off this corner and to finish off the join. So I am going to do 3 more double crochets, do a cluster to finish off this corner. So there's 1, 2, 3. Now with this first chain, I'm going to go in because I'm right next to it. So I'm going to go into this corner, grab my yarn, pull it up through the corner and through the loop on my hook to do a slip stitch. I'm going to chain 1 more time to finish off that corner and slip stitch to close. Oops, yeah. Slip stitch into my first double crochet here, or chain 3, however you did that. First one. And now we've got, it's just connected at the chain 1 spaces in between. We're just at those gaps. So that's a nice, easy, kind of loose, but it's still very secure connection. Now I'm going to do this side with this one. So abracadabra, ta-da! I've got one that's got all 3 sides done. Now I'm going to join this one with the other join as you go method. Again, I'm going to chain 1 for this corner. I've gotten half of the corner done, chain 1 of the chain 2. The second chain will be the slip stitch into the next corner. Now I'm joining this top square to this bottom square. And I'm going to connect after doing each double crochet. There's going to be a slip stitch. So I'm going to finish this corner by doing 3 double crochets. Here's 1 double crochet. I'm going to connect to this double crochet, the first double crochet of this, or the mirroring double crochet in this top square. I'm going to go top down, grab the yarn, pull it through that stitch, and pull it through. Do a slip stitch. double crochet number 2, connect double crochet number 2 to the mirroring double crochet number 2 on the other square. Bring it through that stitch and bring it through the loop. You've slip stitched it together. Ooh. Third stitch to the third stitch from the top down, go through that entire stitch. Grab your yarn, pull it through, and pull it through. Now this one you can just chain 1, because we're chaining 1 in between the clusters, if you chained 1. So I've chained 1, I'm going to go into the next cluster. When I finish a double crochet, I'm going to connect it to the mirrored double crochet up top by putting my hook down from the top into the whole stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through, pull it through. So I've got a slip stitch. The second double crochet, finish the stitch, then connect it to the corresponding double crochet, the square you're connecting to. Third double crochet, finish that double crochet, top down into the stitch corresponding in your other your other square, your finished square. Grab the yarn, pull it through the stitch, pull it through the loop. Chain 1. Now we've got the corner. First double crochet, you finish the double crochet. Now you want to connect the double crochet to the corresponding double crochet. Grab your yarn. You're putting your hook in from the top to the back. Your yarn is always at the back. Pull the yarn from the back to the front. Pull the yarn through the loop on your hook. Slip stitch. Double crochet. Finish the double crochet. Top to bottom. Whole stitch. Grab the yarn from the back. Pull it to the front. Pull it through the loop on your hook. Slip stitch. Last one. Yikes. There we go. Now for my first chain, for these two, connecting these two together, I'm going to need to do a slip stitch into the chain. My, this yarn is splitty. So I got the first chain there, second chain here, and now slip stitch into that first double crochet on the other side of that corner. And there you go. So this side, well, let me put it back to the original direction here. This side, we just connected at the chain 1 or the chain 2, the first of the chain 2 or the chain 1 in between. So there's this gap in between. It's still very secure. This one is even more secure. You've used the color of your last round to go through and use it. So you're not using a joining color, you're using the color of the last round. So if your last round is the same color throughout, that makes a nice clean look. We'll just pretend it's like that. A nice clean look as you go around, and you've got a nice thick border. Or if they're all just solid color, you wouldn't even see it. It kind of gives it kind of a braid look. I like that. So that's that way. I have here 3 half squares. So they're not a triangle. This is a triangle. We have 3 sides. This is a half square. We have 2 sides of the square. So this is one side of, you know, it's a 90-degree angle. I'm going to show you how to connect these if you just have this left. I have none of this yarn, none of this yarn, none of this yarn, nothing left, or I've gone someplace and I want to put them together, or I just don't want to have to deal with additional yarn. Well, guess what? You don't need it. You do not need it. It's the wrong side. There's the right side. So I'm just going to, you can use it on any shape. I just want to show you on this shape. Now this could do like that, like that, and create a whole scarf, whatever. I only have one tail left. These tails are all gone before I decided what I was going to do with it. So I'm going to use this tail. I'm going to show you how to use a tail, a little short tail, to secure the end. I'm going to start this way because I want to go like that and end here. And then I'll show you what to do if you don't have a tail. You have no tails left, then what do you do? So I'm going to grab a 4mm hook. Now I used, I don't know what, 5.5mm, an eye hook. I'm going to use a 4, and this is my dot, so I have no idea what letter it is. You're all screaming at me, I'm sure, telling me what it is. So I-H, is it a G? Or is the G the one that's got to be like a 3.75? I don't know. Anyway, 4mm. I'm going smaller just so that I can work in here. Now, since I'm not using any other yarn, even though I'm using a small hook and it's going to tighten it up, it's still the same amount of stitches that, or the same amount of yarn in these stitches that I made using the 5.5mm I-9 hook. So after it's all kind of pulled together, you just stretch it out and it lays back down. So I'm going to start with this seam here. I'm going to put together where I want to seam it, right sides up. Take this, grab it, pull it up. Then I'm going to look at these two lines of V's. There's the orange, there's the pink, because orange and pink are fabulous together. So I'm going to start down here. I have 3 double crochets in a cluster, and then 3 double crochets and 3 double crochets. Same thing here, and I did not put a chain in between these. If you do usually put a chain in between your granny clusters, no big deal. Just use, you just need to get the one leg of the chain stitch. So I'm gonna only use the inside loops. I'm gonna put my crochet hook into this first stitch here, inside loop right there, and then I'm gonna find this granny cluster of 3 and then go from the top down and then just pull through. I've got pink on my hook, so I know it's from this piece. So next I'm gonna go orange. So if you have the same color of last rounds, then you just need to pay attention and make sure that you're going in the right order. So I'm gonna go, I have pink on my hook, so I'm gonna go into the orange, down from the top, grab that inside loop, pull it through the loop on my hook. So I'm basically slip stitching, but slip stitching these actual stitches together without any additional yarn. Now I'm at the pink, so I go down in the middle of the V, grab that inside loop, pull it through. Down, pull. Down, pull. Now if you do get off, you skipped one somewhere and you're not in the same cluster, I should be, since I started with orange, I'm going to end in pink, I should be here in the last stitch of the cluster, and I am. If you set it down, make sure nobody touches it. If you're going to set it down and come back later or put it away, you need to use a stitch marker in this and just put it in that loop. Yes, it's part of a stitch, part of the pink stitch. And now you're good. It's not going to come out. Even if you don't, it's not very easy to come out. So if you need to frog, so what I was saying is if you notice that you're off and you need to go back a couple to pick up a stitch that you missed, then it's the pink that's up here, so you grab this pink and just kind of lightly pull. Lightly pull. You can't really, I mean you can, but you're gonna stretch out your stitches a lot. Just look and see what you're pulling out first is the orange. Now the loop up there is pink. Just kind of go, hopefully you don't have a lot to do. And you just kind of pull them out one by one so that you don't stretch out too bad these stitches. But you know, if you do, you do, and you just kind of reshape them. So there you go. So I'll do that again. I'm starting with the orange. These are the two. This is the seam I want to make. I have the right side up. These are the two I'm gonna join. I'm gonna grab this seam, pull it up to where the wrong sides are facing each other and the right sides are facing out. So I go into the orange first, just because I'm going into the orange first. There's no reason for it. And then I go into the inside loop from the top to grab that inside loop of the pink, and then go into the orange from the top, into the pink from the top, and the orange from the top, and the pink from the top. Try not to split it. So that's 3. So I should have done the first cluster, and I have on both sides. I've got pink on my hook, so next is orange. I'm coming up to the end here. There's the pink, and now I've got another orange. I started with orange, so I need to end with pink. So that is the last of that cluster. So since I'm at the corner here, and we've got the 2 chains, we didn't really have a corner down here, so we just started in the stitch. So I've got pink on my hook, so I'm going to go into the first chain here, pull up a loop, and the chain here, just grab one and pull up a loop. So I ended on the pink. Now remember, I want to join the purple as well. So what I'm going to do is go into this second chain. I ended with the pink. Even if you ended with the orange, it's okay, just grab that orange and just pull that in. And now I'm going to go again with the orange, because that's what I did over here. So I start with orange. So I'm going to do orange into orange. And then I'm going to start with the third one in the pink. Just going to pull that in. That's purple. So then I'll go back to the orange. Purple, orange. And make sure I'm going back and forth. So like I said, if your shapes, squares, triangles, half squares, hexes, whatever they are, if they end with the same color, just make sure that you're keeping track. Try to finish a whole square before you put it down so you don't lose track. Unless you're really good at seeing your stitches. So we're almost down. So I just kind of keep it up here with my finger in between so that I can get to each side cleanly. All right, so I'm down here. I'm gonna go into, well, I did the orange first, so I still have, oops, I still have another purple to do. There we go. And then I just split that really badly. Pull that through. Now, I purposely left this little tail at the place where I knew I was going to stop, so that I can take that tail, pull it through this loop. Otherwise, it's a live stitch. Pull it through the loop, and then do a chain. And then you snug that down, hide your tail, everything's cool. And see how this pulled it up pretty tightly? Well, these stitches were made with the same size hook. So if you just kind of reshape them, then they lay down flat. And you can see the different colors of them, like, because these are different color yarn, for these squares. If you had the same color squares, then it would just be really invisible. It's completely flat. There is no additional yarn going through here, only the yarn from the stitch that was originally there. Cool, huh? If you have already sewn in all your ends, or if you've done all of the work and you've gotten all the way down to the end and you find that there's no tail there, for whatever reason, you got no tail, that's okay. What I want to do is actually not go into that last one just yet. So let's say I've still got the orange. Now I'm going to go to the purple and get one of those loops from that chain on my hook. So I've got 2 on my hook. I've got both of them on my hook. Grab this and you're going to make a tassel through them. So just pull this yarn through these 2 loops, and then take both of those tails and pull it through like you're making a tassel. All right, so there you go. That's on there. And now you've got this to weave in the back. So, I mean, you might have a little bit there. It depends on if you're doing a border on whatever you're doing. So, I mean, you make a judgment. Do you need it to be the same color, or is it all going to be covered up anyway? So this is the front side of a bandana that I did with that that join without yarn. The join without yarn. I don't know what I'll call it. It's probably out there somewhere. I couldn't find it. I didn't see it anywhere. So I wanted to use all these different colors so that I would have the 2 different colors in that kind of braid between. But like I said, this is completely flat. This is the back side, completely flat. And then I just put, you know, a little granny stitch border around the bandana. A little too close to see the whole thing, but there you go. So this is that last joining method. That's what that looks like. Now this you could probably, you know, stitch it together if you don't want the holes in there. I don't mind. There's holes all through the granny squares, right? So there's that. So these are squares, these are half squares to make the bandana. So I hope you have enjoyed our little adventure touring through the different ways of joining your yarn. Gigi wants to join some yarn too. So we had a little whip stitch of the whole stitch of just the inside loops. And we had the single crochet on the top. We also tried that with a slip stitch, and then we did a slip stitch with the inside loop, and we also did a zip stitch, which I think I undid those. I can't find them now. I just had them. But then we did that. Then we used a join as you go, the Jago, with the chain just connecting at the gaps. And then we also did this different Jago where we connected the whole cluster all the way down. And then my new one, maybe it's new, maybe it's not. If you've seen it, let me know. Where you connect without using any yarn. Join with no yarn. And I used that for my little bandana. Isn't that pretty? If you liked this video, please hit that thumbs up. It really helps me out. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. And you will be notified if you click that bell of the next time that I drop a video on how do you ... How do you do it? I don't know. Hopefully next Tuesday. I appreciate it. I appreciate your time. And I will see you next time. Bye.